Go ahead.
Hey, Coach. Hope you're
Hey, how
doing
you
well. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Same to you.
Can you just talk about Joe Giles-Harris and his play in the last couple of weeks since he's kind of seen the field a bit more?
Yeah, it was obviously we had an injury with Carrera and that kind of stuff, and we really didn't have a backup Sam, on our roster. So, we moved him from the Mike position, and he has been a great surprise for us. We've talked about it as a staff over the last 3 weeks. He does everything he's asked to do. Plays with great technique. He has a little bit more rush than we really seen out of him, even as a Mike linebacker in blitz situation. So it's a credit to him. He really studies, once again, a position change in the middle of the year, how he's committed to obviously getting better and better each day. And I think you see that on tape where he's making some plays for us and doing exactly what we need him to do in our system.
Thanks, Coach.
You bet.
Thanks, John. All right, let's go over to Gary and then Dustin.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Joe, but I appreciate Jordan beat me to the punch. But, Coach, I went back. If you talk about the late-round draft picks and undrafted free agents, first- and second-year guys, those guys have had 19 starts on defense. And I'm just wondering, obviously you know about the injuries that you've had, but clearly these guys were ready. And we're talking about, Clay Brooks and Costin and Daniel Thomas and everything. So you just talk about how these guys, without training camp, without preseason games, were still ready to go when you needed them.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's a credit to them when they are in the building. They work extremely hard. In practice, they work extremely hard. And, as we got midway through the season, it's basically like finishing up an off season. So with a lot less individual and technique work. But, it's a credit to them about how they've came in, studied, learned, and did the best that they can. I think they're both playing, or really about 4 or 5 of them that are really playing hard, doing what we ask them to do, and they're only going to get better as time goes on. So it's a credit to them about preparing themselves to get ready to play early.
Okay. Thank you, Coach.
You betcha.
Thanks, Gary. Let's go to Dustin and then JP.
Hey, Coach Wash. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about how well Caleb Chiasson has progressed over these last few weeks? He's seemed to turn a corner and really, really look good these last couple of weeks.
Yeah. It's the same thing. He's got a great work ethic, and I think he's a better young man than he is a football player, which, obviously you want great character and great football players, and I think we got that with him. But, he's worked extremely hard since he's been here of trying to improve his game and getting better and better each week. His snap count, we got to continue to get more and more snaps out of him. That's the conversations that Rebs and I have had, that we got to continue to get more and more reps because he's going to get better, and it shows. So I think these next 2 games, obviously he'll continue to improve. Hopefully we can get him to get a couple sacks and that kind of stuff, which obviously he's dying for at this point in time. But, he works his tail off to get better each and every day, studies, and you're starting to see some of the benefits of that hard work.
Thanks, Coach Wash.
Yep.
Thanks. Let's go to JP and then D-Rock.
Hey, Todd, what kind of matchup issue is Allen Robinson, and what do you remember most about him from being around here?
Obviously he can run. He is a big, long player that really is. He's really developed how to come in and out of cuts. You see him, his route running has really gotten a lot better. He's been gone for a while, but you've seen the maturity in his game get better and better. And, the quarterback likes to go to him. So obviously we got to do some things to try to take care of him. If it's doubles, if it's clouding him, whatever we need to do, because he's their go-to guy, especially when they get down in the high red and the red, they really like to go to him. So we got to know where he's at on the field at all times. But he isn't a very explosive wide receiver, and he's a matchup nightmare one-on-one.
Thanks, JP. All right, let's finish up with D-Rock.
Hey, Todd, when you're facing a guy like A-Rob, and, last week with the offense facing, like Calais, well, I guess he didn't play, but like Jan, when you've had a guy on your roster for a while and you know him a little bit, do you have to do stuff different to prepare for him, or does that give you a little bit of an advantage in that maybe you don't have to study as much film on those guys?
No, you're going to do your work regardless of who it is. One of the benefits is you get to see the guys again. Last week it was awesome to see Jan, talk to him for quite a while with our masks on before the game. Make sure I mention that, and talk to Calais. So it's obviously that's one of the benefits of playing guys that used to be here. But obviously with A-Rob, we know what kind of player he is. He's over 1,000 yards on this season. It's just somebody that we've put a lot of time in because his game has changed since he's been here and the offense is different. So you got to put in the work regardless if they've been here or not.
Thanks.
Thanks, D-Rock. Looks like Brian Sexton's going to sneak in with one more.
Hey, Wash, Trubisky's a streaky guy. Can you make that happen, or is that something you have to have happen, on its own, and then you take advantage of it? In other words, can you get him off to a bad start and expect him to be bad the rest of the day? How do you do that?
Well, I think, their coaching staff in the last couple of weeks, Bill and Matt have done a really good job of moving him. He's ran an extremely high amount of boots and stuff like that, where he's out in space, where he's got a little bit of it's not a true run pass option, but he's out in space. They do a lot of sprint game and stuff like that, quick game. So really, I think they've done a real nice job of figuring out what he does and what he does well. And that's what they're doing. You don't see a lot of drop back and just air it out. It's boots, controlled passing game. And, he's had a lot of success these last couple of weeks at it. So, for us, we got to try to make it difficult for him, in the boots and make sure we match those nice and tight, maybe slow down some defensive ends so we have some pressure on him on the boots. But they've done a real nice job of playing to his strength the last 2 weeks, and you can see that with his quarterback rating.
Thanks, Washer.
You bet.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
All right, that's it.
All right.
We'll wrap you up.
Thank you,
this
fellas.
holiday. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Coach, you've been back and forth and you've talked about how challenging it is to have different quarterbacks week to week. What about Wednesday, Christmas week, and not necessarily knowing who your starter is? How much of a challenge is that for you?
Well, it's been a challenge all year, and really it's up to the quarterbacks now to understand it. If you're dressed out, you are supposed to be ready to play. So we have to get both of them ready to play. We'll see how Gardner's throwing, see how Mike's throwing, and I think Coach Marone will make that determination Friday or Saturday. So those guys have been great as far as mentally getting themselves ready to play. Physically, us adhering to the individual has been quite the challenge, but all these plays should be good for both of them, we hope.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Let's go to John Shipley.
Hey, Coach. Obviously, with James Robinson, I know he said he expects to play, but with him a little banged up, how important is it for the guys behind him to kind of step up this week?
Well, that's the case at every position, but yeah, it's very critical. The DO gets some good reps, and he had a good run the other day on the draw, and he's done some good things in the passing game as far as protections. Now we just got to put more on his plate. I think he's up to the challenge. He's been on a couple different teams. I had him at Washington. He's been at Tampa. So he's an experienced kid that plays hard and is very smart and fundamentally sound. So I think given the opportunity, he'll be ready. And Ziggy, he'll be ready to go too. He's every time he's touched the ball so far, he showed some explosion. We probably got to get him the ball a little bit more.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Thanks, John. Let's go over to Mark Long.
Hey, Jay, how just kind of daunting is it to have a quarterback competition in week 16. It doesn't, we don't see that very often in this league, and I don't know if you've seen it very often in your coaching tenure.
Yeah, it's unique. I think really you have to look at the body of work that both these guys have put together through training camp and on to now, and then we have to evaluate their games as we go on and see how they're doing in practice and see who gets the game plan a little bit more soundly, I guess. I don't know. I think really it'll be up to Coach Marone, and we'll have some input as a staff, and hopefully the players will have some input on the practice field, and if somebody's throwing the ball a lot better than the other, then we got to go with the guys throwing the ball better.
Thanks, Mark. All right. John Reed, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, Coach. I just want to touch a little bit on what Mark asked. Well, how difficult it is to get a fair evaluation when you splitting those reps up between the two of them, though. Isn't that difficult to get to see enough of both and against the first team? I would think at this point you guys are not doing a lot of one-on-one against the first team defense. So what do you evaluate?
Yeah, it's the plays will be pretty sparse this time of year. Doing some walkthroughs and very little one-on-ones. None against the defense number ones. Really, it's against scout teams. So we got to get these guys a few reps and see how they do. And I think the big thing, like I mentioned earlier, it's not so much how you throw your first pass in team period one, but really we're going to go back and really evaluate the tape, the games that Mike played, the games that Gardner's played, and hopefully make a determination over the overall big scope of things.
What did you feel that Gardner Minshew has? I would assume a slow start. I think he had 53 yards passing in the first half and played much better in the second half. But what was your evaluation of him in that game last week?
Well, I think there's some good things. We got down so quick, so fast. I think there's a few of the sacks that obviously we have to avoid, at all costs. The turnover is critical. We had pick six called back, fortunately. The sack in the end zone and the fumble. Those are three critical plays that you can't have, especially against a talented team like Baltimore, puts you really badly in the hole. So, but he did just, the one thing about Gardner, he's going to keep fighting. He's going to keep competing. He's going to make some plays over the course of a game. But when you're down 16-0, 23-0, we got to stay more competitive than early.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, John. And it doesn't look like there's any other questions unless someone's going to sneak in at the last minute. All right, Coach, thanks so much for your time. Merry Christmas. Everyone else?